it's Jennifer from the Extension Office with our weekly Wildcat Club lesson. And so we're still dealing with the series on stress and how to relieve stress. And so this week's lesson is on exercise. So exercise helps us in all kinds of ways, and one way that it helps us is to help relieve stress. If we just get out and take a walk, sometimes we feel better. Some people like to pump weights, and that relieves tension and helps them to relieve some stress. So exercise is good for us in lots of ways and can help to relieve stress as well. So the first handout that I gave you guys, and you got this a couple of weeks ago now, is from the dietary guidelines for all Americans, but this breaks it down for school-age children and adolescents. So it's also out there for little kids, it's out there for adults, it's out there for older people like your grandparents, but this one is aimed just at kids ages 6 to 17. So as we've seen from all kinds of things, football players doing ads, billboards along the highway, we should be getting 60 minutes of exercise a day. Physical activity, not necessarily what we think of as exercise. So there's all kinds of ways that we can be physical and be moving our bodies, and it's not really what we would consider exercise, but it is still doing our body good. And that's what they're talking about here. It's physical activity, not just sitting on the couch and eating potato chips. So there are 3 different types of physical activity that we need to kind of flip-flop back and forth throughout the day or throughout the week to help different parts of our body and different parts of our system. So there's aerobic exercise, which is when we're doing something that's getting our heart rate up. So whether we're running or jogging or fast walking, swimming, biking, lifting weights can even be aerobic exercise if we're kind of moving with it. Some workout videos out there free online. All kinds of things that we can do for aerobic activity. Even housework. So if you're helping around the house and you are doing sweeping, mopping, even dusting, you're moving things, you're moving your whole body at the same time, that can be some aerobic activity. Now, folding the laundry, not necessarily aerobic, but it is still physical activity. And that has more to do with our muscle strengthening because as you're moving and you've got a little bit of tension there, you're still working those muscles. So muscle strengthening is a second type of exercise, physical activity. And we should be doing this at least 3 days a week. So muscle strengthening can be anything from lifting weights. It can be walking because that's using those muscles in our legs. And when we're walking, if we move our arms as well, then we're getting even more of a workout. And that helps kind of put it into that aerobic exercise area as well. So it's not just one or the other. Something could be both of these. So muscle strengthening could also be putting away dishes because you're reaching and you're lifting and you're using those arms and you have something that's in them, maybe not too heavy, but at least it's something. So that's still a muscle strengthening exercise. Some of the exercises that you can find online where you're doing, say like a stretch like this, you're still strengthening your muscle. So I am pulling back on my elbow and it is actually stretching this muscle and is actually strengthening it. So you don't necessarily have to have equipment or something heavy to be doing a muscle strengthening exercise. And the third category is bone strengthening. And so that's something that's going to help to keep our bones doing what they need to do. Bones are constantly changing. They're breaking down and being built back up, which is why it's so important that we get calcium and minerals in our diet, because otherwise we're losing bone mass, and that's not a good thing. Especially at your age. You want to be building bone mass still, not losing it. So bone strengthening things, again, walking is a bone strengthening exercise because you're putting weight on those leg bones, and that's going to help to keep them in better condition. So there's a chart toward the back. It's called Table 3.1, and it talks about these different exercises or different things that fit into these categories. So that can give you some ideas to start with on how to get some of these different categories in. But then brainstorm on your own because there's all kinds of things that you might enjoy doing that are not on this list. So if you're out in the country and you're out throwing hay bales, that's physical exercise. That's bone strengthening, it's muscle strengthening, and it's aerobic. If you're in town and you're walking around with your friends, that's aerobic exercise and it's also muscle strengthening exercise. If you're biking, that's going to be some aerobic exercise and some muscle strengthening exercise. So think outside the box. Think of different things you can do to be physically active. And I like this little snippet at the bottom of the page. It's about Darius, a 16-year-old adolescent, and it talks about what he did during the week to get that physical activity in. And it sounds just like a normal teenager, right? So he was walking his dog, he was playing basketball, he was walking, because he walks his dog every day, which is something you need to do, right? He played tennis, he did some planks and some push-ups, played frisbee in the park. He vacuumed the family home and cleaned the bathroom. So, riding his bike. So all kinds of things that are actually physical activity, whether you realize it or not. So, that's just a good place to start. Make sure you read that, get some ideas on how we should be moving our bodies. And when we are doing exercise, you're getting this coming week, make sure you stay hydrated. Water is very important for our body. We'll be talking about that in the next lesson. Some Gatorade is okay now and then, not something you want to drink unless you're sweating, because unless you're losing salt, you don't want to be putting salt back in. Most of us have more salt than we need in our diets. But water is good if you want to put a little bit of juice in it to give it some flavor. We'll talk more about that, as I said, next week, but stay hydrated while you're getting your physical activity, because your muscles need that water to do what they need to do. So in what you got last week, there are these little bands. And so this is a good way at home, if you can't really get out and do much, that you can be doing some muscle strengthening exercise at home, because this is going to be working your muscles, and you don't have to go out and buy expensive barbells or something. So there's different tensions to them, if you see that. So the yellow one is really tight, the blue one is kind of in between, and then the green one, I think, is the loosest. So if you're starting out with some of these exercises, start with the green one and then kind of move your way up. You might want to use the yellow one for your legs even to begin with, because your legs are typically stronger than your arms because they carry all your body weight around. So you have a handout that has some of those exercises listed that work lots of different muscles. So make sure you're not just working the same muscle all the time. You need to be working all of your muscles. And I know all of us at some point in time will do something that we haven't done in a while, and it's like, oh, I'm using muscles I don't usually use. We need to be using those muscles all the time, because everything works together in our body to keep us going. So be working different parts of your body. It can be on different days. It doesn't all have to be at the same time. But work your arms one day and your legs the next day and your core, which is your abs and your lower back, on a different day. So that way it doesn't get as boring to be doing the same thing all the time. But make sure you're following the posture that it shows, because posture is very important when you are working out, so that you're using those muscles correctly, because it's very easy to injure muscles when you're not doing it correctly. So make sure you're following the directions. Watch a video on YouTube if you can, because they'll show the correct way to be standing or sitting or squatting, so that you're using the muscles correctly and not pinching them or contracting them in ways that are going to cause harm. So start with that bigger packet of the bands, and then this single page that came with the bands. These are a little bit more advanced of exercises, so kind of work toward that, but I wouldn't start with this one, because these are a little bit harder to do. Maybe you're already in really good shape and you could start with those. So that's up to you guys. I'm not sure how good of a shape you are in. So the other thing that I have here for you is an activity log. So you guys should have gotten 4 or 5 copies of this, and it's something for you to write on. It's not going to be returned to me. Nobody's going to see it, but kind of keep track of your physical activity, because that's going to help you to realize that, yes, I'm getting some good physical activity, or I guess I don't do as much as I thought I did, so I need to do a little bit more to get in that 60 minutes a day. So put the day of the week, write what you did. So I left a big space here so that you can write 5 different things in here, 10 different things in here, however many different things you do in a day. And it might be in 10-minute snippets, because you might walk the dog, and you might put away the dishes, and you might take a walk, and you might go for a swim. So might not all happen at the same time, which is fine. We just need 60 minutes total a day. So plenty of space to write that in. And then put how many minutes you're doing each one. And then total it up for the day and put that in there, and hopefully it's about 60 minutes. Now, 60 minutes 7 days a week might not happen, but aim for 5 or 6. And that way you're getting some good physical activity. I also gave you guys a pedometer. So this is something that helps to count your steps, and that helps you realize how much physical activity you're getting as well. And that can be also written down on this log. So make sure that you have it in the miles and not in kilometers, unless you want to do that math in your head to figure out how far you're going. Unless you naturally think in kilometers, then you're fine. And then there is a way to set it. I cannot get it to work, but maybe you guys with your littler fingers, maybe you have bigger fingers, I don't know. But maybe you can get that to work. But you need to set the stride if possible, because somebody short like me, I have a shorter stride than, say, my husband, who is much taller than I am. So if this is set already for an average stride, which is probably about a 5'10" male weighing about 180 pounds. So that would be fine for them, but for me, that's not going to be accurate to tell me what I'm really doing, because my stride is shorter, so I'm taking a lot more steps in the same amount of time he is. And so my physical activity might be a little bit higher, in a sense, trying to keep up with him, okay? So see if you can figure that out. If you can, let me know so that I can try to get mine reset. There are instructions in the box, but when I try to push these little buttons, it does not work for me. Or you guys might be better at Googling or YouTubing something to find out how to do it. Some things to keep in mind is that to be physically active doesn't take a lot of money, and it doesn't take a lot of equipment. These little bands are great. If you are wanting to lift something, think about what you might have around your house. There's a commercial on TV right now, I don't know, for Geico or something, about a little boy, and he's got paint cans on the end of a broomstick. So anything to get some weight, just make sure the paint can is totally shut so you're not painting the floor. Cans of green beans are good to have to, if you're watching TV, when a commercial comes on, take those cans of green beans and do some exercises. Up over your head, out and about. So lots of different things for your legs, even if you're just laying down on the floor and doing bicycles with it. Or windshield wipers. Lots of different things out there that don't take any equipment at all, but they're still using your muscles and building your muscles. And if you're doing things faster, because some of those exercises actually would be an aerobic exercise as well. So keep those things in mind. You probably are doing more exercise than you realize, but it's good to kind of keep track for a little bit and see. Now, it's very important at your age to be doing these things, to get in that habit and keep up with that habit throughout life, because a lot of times we don't start new habits when we're in our 30s or 40s, and by then we really need it, and we might have already done a lot of damage by not doing it. So at your age, you are building a lot of muscle, you're still building bone, and so that's important to keep up with that, to be as strong as you can be later in life. You might live to be 100, and if you don't do much exercise now, then at 100 you will probably be in a wheelchair. Whereas if you're physically active and you keep that up at 100, you might be spry and still going for it. So just keep things like that in mind, that things that you do now do affect you later in life in all kinds of ways. So not just by putting too much fat in our body or being overweight, but just by being active makes a big difference. So that is our lesson for today. I'm glad you could join me, and we will do our next lesson on water being the liquid of life. Thanks.